I'm going to start with the story I wasn't even going to talk about, but then this thing exploded like literally a few hours ago today as I was prepping for all this. But it involves Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas. So here's the backstory if you don't know who this guy is. And if you don't know who he is, congrats to you. He's going to make your life miserable at some point. The only question is how. Ken Paxton's the Attorney General of Texas. Before that, he was a Texas state senator. I think in like 2019, he stepped away as Texas state senator so he could run for Attorney General, and he won. His wife, Angela, ran for the seat that he was leaving, and she won. So there's some fun little... Does that count as nepotism? I don't know. But Ken Paxton's the Attorney General of Texas. He's about as MAGA as anyone can be, and not just right-wing extremists, not just doing whatever it is Trump wants him to do, but basically he's just the epitome of, I'm going to use Christianity as my weapon. I'm going to go after everyone who doesn't think like me, believe like me, look like me. It's just constant cruelty, constant corruption. He is so corrupt that the Texas House of Representatives, which I believe is like 92% Republican, I'm making that up, but it's a lot of Republicans, they voted to impeach this guy because of how awful he is. And even Ken Paxton's staffers are like, you got to impeach him. He's a horrible person doing very criminal things. And they did impeach him, but then when it went to the Texas State Senate for that final vote, they were like, but he's MAGA, so we'll keep him around. Anyway, Ken Paxton is everything you don't like about Ted Cruz, you're really not going to like about Ken Paxton, which is interesting because the other U.S. Senator from Texas is a guy named John Cornyn, who is also a MAGA Republican, but he's not as like hardcore to the right as Ted Cruz is, in the sense that he doesn't go full on conspiracy theorist. He doesn't go on like right wing podcasts. I don't think he has a podcast. He's just a boring, bad Republican. And he's running for re-election in Texas to the Senate next year. Where it gets complicated is Texas is a state where Democrats, for years now, they always think maybe this is the year we can win a statewide race. And Beto O'Rourke came really close years ago. And Colin Allred came really close a couple of years ago. But it never really gets close. Like, they came close, but when I say close, I mean within single digits of winning. But that's a big push. That you got to go a long way further in order to win those races. So the question is, if Colin Allred is running again next year, which he is, and he was super popular among Democrats, is there a chance he could win the Senate seat next year? Against John Cornyn, the answer is probably not. John Cornyn's a pretty steady Republican, and there's no reason for Republicans to run away from the guy. But what if Ken Paxton tries to primary John Cornyn, and Ken Paxton wins the mega vote, which he totally could, and he's winning in all the polls right now? If he's the Republican nominee, Democrats statewide might actually have a chance because of how awful of a person Ken Paxton is. So this is the background you need to know. Ken Paxton's running for Senate, but he hasn't won a primary yet, but he totally could win a primary, and that would be really bad if Republicans want to keep that seat. If you're a Democrat, you're like, I really hope Ken Paxton wins the primary because that's the best chance we got to beat a Republican candidate in Texas. So with all that in mind, this is the tweet that Ken Paxton's wife published earlier today. Let me see if I could show it to you. Today, after 38 years of marriage, I filed for divorce on biblical grounds. Let's pause there. She filed for divorce after nearly 4 decades on biblical grounds. That's code. Like, what does that mean? Usually, if you're in a conservative Christian church, there's only a couple reasons you're allowed to get divorced with, like, the blessing of the church. One is if your spouse loses their faith. They become an atheist. That's a legitimate reason for you to leave that person. Another one is infidelity within the marriage. That's a biblical reason. Now, they will try to counsel you. They will try to keep you together. But that's basically a legitimate excuse that a church will say, okay, you can get divorced for that reason. What if your the victim of spousal abuse, by and large, and there's a lot of examples of this, that's not a reason you're allowed to get divorced. Like plenty of Southern Baptist pastors have gotten in a lot of trouble for telling women that they should stay with an abusive spouse because God doesn't want them to get divorced. Like it's really bad. So when she says she filed for divorce on biblical grounds, the odds are, okay, it's infidelity. In fact, during Ken Paxton's impeachment trial a couple of years ago, the fact that he was having an affair came up in the courtroom. Like, this is not news. Like, people knew about this years ago. In fact, according to the, let me pull that up one more time here. In fact, according to the Texas Tribune, if I can find this right here, the person he was with, check this out. The impeachment claims focused on benefits Paxton provided to a real estate developer, as well as an alleged extramarital affair the Attorney General had with a former Senate aide. That ended in 2019 after his wife learned about it, then resumed in 2020. It's an open secret at this point. What's weird is that if you go back to his wife's tweet, if she filed for divorce on biblical grounds and it's infidelity, everyone knew about this like 5-6 years ago. Why is she doing this now? I'm not really sure. She goes on to say, I believe marriage is a sacred covenant and I've earnestly pursued reconciliation. But in light of recent discoveries, I do not believe that it honors God or is loving to myself, my children, or Ken to remain in the marriage. I move forward with complete confidence that God is always working everything together for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Yeah, that last paragraph does not matter one bit. Okay, so she's filing for divorce. I don't know why she's doing it now when all this stuff has been going on for years, but whatever. If this was a private couple, if this were just two random people, I would not care. In fact, I would argue this is nobody's business. But Ken Paxton has a habit of going after everybody who's not like him and making their personal lives his business. If they are trans, he's going after them. If they have an abortion, he's going after those women. This is the guy who's supporting like the bounty hunter law that says if you know someone getting an abortion, we'll give you money if you rat them out. So Ken Paxton loves making other people's private decisions his personal business and the state's business. So you know what? This gets to be our business now. So in response to that tweet, Ken Paxton also responded today, and this is what he said. After facing the pressures of countless political attacks and public scrutiny, Angela and I have decided to start a new chapter in our lives. I could not be any more proud or grateful for the incredible family that God has blessed us with. Blah, blah, blah. It's the last paragraph. No one cares. But he says, I ask for your prayers and privacy at this time. He doesn't get privacy because other people in his state, when they're going through something difficult and personal, Ken Paxton shoves himself into their lives. And now he wants privacy? Nobody. You open this door. We all get to enter it now. But okay, he admits this is going on. He admits he's getting the divorce. Fine. Interestingly enough, this is also from the Texas Tribune today. The couple stopped living together more than a year ago, June of 2024, according to a copy of the divorce filing obtained by the Texas Tribune. There were a couple other things that were interesting in here. This is about his corruption. Last year, prosecutors agreed to drop a 9-year-old felony securities fraud case against him. He also closed the door on a federal investigation into corruption allegations that his former aides lodged with the FBI, and he overcame a Texas state bar attempt to sanction him because he tried to overturn the 2020 election results. So this is not a good guy. I don't know necessarily what's going on with this family. I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know if this is something like the Cornyn team helped release today. Is his wife doing this to try to sabotage his Senate race before it gets even further? As of now, Donald Trump hasn't even issued an endorsement in the primary. I think he's waiting to see which of those two guys is going to win so that he could say, yeah, I'm totally backing the winner. Because the last thing he wants to do is endorse one of these guys, have them lose, and then he has to backtrack. So Donald Trump is probably just sitting this one out. He wants to support Ken Paxton. Paxton is as corrupt as Trump is, but he's like, oh no, maybe I should wait on this one. I don't know how this ends. One interesting thing to point out, though, regarding this story is that if you look at Angela's tweet where she announced that divorce and you look at the comments underneath, the MAGA crowd is so mad at her. They're like, why are you airing your dirty laundry in public? Why are you trying to sabotage his Senate race? Whereas when Paxton admitted, yeah, we are getting divorced, they're all like, yeah, King, we're behind you. We have you all the way. Very, very MAGA-ish responses. I thought this was pretty telling. This is from just a random right-wing Christian preacher. He's responding to the announcement of divorce. This was caused by complementarianism because the woman wasn't being properly submissive. God did not design or permit women to rule over households, let alone entire states. So we have a senator, because his wife is a state senator, who is often gone from her home and her bed, slandering her husband publicly, claiming the divorce is for loving self, farming sympathy online. I'm not saying her husband hasn't sinned, even grievously, but this screams, I'm a closet feminist, and my husband won't do what I want. Unfortunately, it seems no pastor was willing to tell her, step out of public office, go home, love and submit to your husband, love your kids, and try again. Which, of course, is the worst possible advice to give to someone who is in a very bad marriage. I know it's more complicated than this, but biblical patriarchy prevents the family chaos that often results in divorce. Again, the dumbest possible take from all of this. But that is not an unusual take among the MAGA Christian right crowd. I do like the idea of saying I filed for divorce on biblical grounds, because I feel like you could just say that for anything. I'm ending this marriage for, I'm sorry, there was another thing she said as well that I wanted to highlight. I want to make sure I can find it before I say it. I will just quote from the Texas Tribune here again. Check out this one last thing right here. I believe marriage is a sacred covenant, and I've earnestly pursued reconciliation. But in light of recent discoveries, I do not believe that it honors God or is loving to myself, my children, or can remain in the marriage. Maybe I missed that in the tweet. This idea that in light of recent discoveries, and I'm divorcing you on biblical grounds. I feel like you could say that for anything you don't want to do. Like, I'm not doing the dishes because in light of recent discoveries, I just can't do it on biblical grounds. We should start using that, I think. All right. I don't know what else to say. It's such a new story that happened. I'm not sure what other what other parts of this are going to drop in the next little bit. But if you have any questions or comments about this before I move on to one of the stories I actually wanted to get to, go ahead and leave them here. Let's talk. Hi, y'all. Texan here. I laughed out loud in an empty room when I read biblical reasons. Yes, I agree. That's the right reaction to a couple's dissociation. What if the biblical reason is that the husband is worshiping one of the other gods? That is a legit reason you're allowed to get divorced in conservative Christian circles.